Good morning, everyone. Welcome to One Heart, One Mind. And our practitioner for the day who's going to start us out this morning is Lisa Lazaro. She's going to do our opening prayer, and I have some beautiful quotes. I used two of them, Lisa. They're beautiful quotes.
Okay.
I couldn't pick. I'm sorry.
I know, neither can I.
I'm going to mute and you start us out. Thank you.
Okay. So maybe if we could take just one deep breath. As we join together today, we focus our celebration on the presence that is never an absence, that field of divine light and love that we call God. It is through, around every part of existence and in every part of existence, and it's in each and every one of us. It is the rock of ages, the essential source of force that we can depend on in all kinds of change or life experience. And it's the part of us that is always inside and exists within us that we can depend on if we nurture it and pay attention and acknowledge it. And so I am so grateful to know that this is the truth for each and every one of us. And I'm grateful we have the opportunity to celebrate this way together each Sunday. And so I release all my words into the law by saying, and so it is.
So it is.
And so it is. Thank you. I'm going to share your quotes.
Okay. Okay. We have the two quotes, first by Stephen Covey. People can't live with change if there's not a changeless core inside them. The key to the ability to change is a changeless sense of who you are, what you're about, and what you value. And then the other one from Reverend Michael Beckwith. It is a source beyond ego that provides the inner guidance that will lead us to transcending our current limitation. It lets us know we face nothing alone, that we're indeed carried by the Creator. Life walking in our feet, working through our hands, beating our hearts, and breathing through our breath. And so perhaps we could take a minute or so just to consider that whole holiness that is moving through your being right now. So perhaps we can come back together. And I just have one thing that I want to share before we do the affirmation. And that was something else that I read, or I can't remember if I read it or I heard it. But I think it was Reverend Beckwith quoting Howard Thurman in terms of this concept of radiance remembered. And it was the essence of in as a way of moving yourself out of a dark space, is to remember the feeling that you had at times that you really experienced the spirit. Because I think each of us has had those moments when a spirit revealed itself to us in a particular way. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because it's been resonating with me for several days now. So now we could do July's affirmation, which is, and perhaps we can say it together. I live life within the freedom of God. I freely participate with God's nature and God's law. I walk in gratitude for this inner presence and power. I am enveloped in the one living spirit, which is the author of my freedom, peace, wholeness, and joy. And so it is.
So it is. That was beautiful. I really resonated with the Stephen Covey quote, because that's really what I'm talking about today, is the changeless behind the change we see in the world. So really beautiful. And Richard has a musical for us this morning.
Indeed, indeed. Can you all hear me? Okay. Michelle sent me the information about what today's service and what the theme was going to be. This changeless presence behind all things. And so my mind sort of immediately went to what would be a perfect example of something so deeply profound and moving. And I thought of the first movement of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata as being sort of a perfect embodiment, or the sense of deeply profound and moving that it has within it. And this would be a time to just kind of relax and go within and feel this, feel the spirit of it. Now, Beethoven was born in 1770, died in 1827. And so the Moonlight Sonata isn't going anywhere. It's definitely part of our psyche, the soul of the human race. And I'd like to do a quick version of it.
Thank you, Richard. Wow. You know, I forget sometimes how there's a language just to the music that we don't always need to have the lyrics, although I love lyrics, but the just the music was so incredibly powerful. Thank you so much for that. It was beautiful. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to One Heart, One Mind Center for Spiritual Living's online Sunday service on this very last Sunday in June already. So welcome. You know, you might know, I think I've mentioned before that our parent organization, which is Centers for Spiritual Living, and now I think we're up to 400 and something, almost 500 centers, even internationally, that our parent organization supplies all of the centers within the organization with the monthly themes and the weekly talk outlines that go along with the yearly theme. We have a yearly theme, which I talked about last January. And the theme for 2021 is Timeless Wisdom, Evolutionary Vision. So everything has kind of fallen into that overarching theme. And I know pulling all these themes and talks together is really quite an undertaking. For the first couple of years, I wrote a couple of the outlines, and I know how much effort and time and dedication it takes to pull all of this together. And I'm super grateful to the people that have been doing it. Actually, Reverend Jeffrey Ryan from Riverside has overseen the themes for the last couple of years, and he's fabulous. And each Sunday, even though each minister, each speaker puts together their own version of the talk, they have the outline as a template, if you will, if you want to use it. But even if every talk is different, I really love the idea that we come together as an organization and we're focusing on the same spiritual principles. I think there's some kind of power in that continuity that we're all examining and experiencing that same spiritual idea, whatever it may be. You know, coming together in a shared consciousness of a divine idea. And personally, I use the talk titles, and sometimes I find inspiration in the talk outlines, but generally I just kind of let spirit lead the way as my message kind of unfolds, and then it'll pull me in one direction, and I'll do a little research, and things always come together. Once you set the intention, everything kind of comes together. And I believe I said last week that July's theme is Pulled by Vision. And our focus all month has been on the idea that freedom is necessary for life to express itself. Freedom is a necessary ingredient for the unfolding of a new vision in life, a fresh vision of life. And I've been talking about how life is always changing and recreating itself. And I've been prattling on and on about how life is change. And I've been saying things like, life is vigorously active and never stagnant. Holmes said that as well several times, that life is never stagnant, and that there's always something new on the horizon kind of beckoning us forward. That new vision is always pulling us towards it. And this idea of change seems so obvious. I mean, really, all you have to do is look around at the natural world and see that change is everywhere. Even in our daily living, from the morning to the evening, change is just moving and changing our lives as we live it. sort of self-evident. You almost don't need an explanation about change. Everybody knows it, that life has changed. And so I was surprised to discover when I looked at this week's talk outline that the talk title is Stayed. S-T-A-Y-E-D, stayed. You know, after all this talk about change, now we're going to talk about being stayed, you know. And it's so clear that life in the physical world is constantly changing. However, in the science of mind teaching, we teach that, well, the freedom to change, to grow and expand are the nature of life, that there is a greater constant that lies just below the flow of change and growth. And this constant is the changeless. It's the presence from which all change originates. And of course, it's been called by many names: God, Spirit, the all that is. Holmes called the thing itself. A new term that I like is the field of potential. I love that, especially it very much resonates with me because of quantum physics. This presence is the source and the substance and the supply of everything that we experience in form, everything that we experience in our life. It's the source, this changeless is the source of everything that changes. I think that's a good way to understand it, that change is driven by the changeless. And so I looked up to see what our beloved Ernest Holmes had to say about change. And I found this wonderful quote, and Jim's going to share it with you in the chat. But his quote, this is on page 83 of the Science of Mind textbook. And he said this: creation is the passing of spirit into form and is eternally going on. I love that. The passing of spirit into form. And here's the thing, the important piece, at least I think it's important. This is what he said. He said, he wrote, spirit cannot change. For being all, there is nothing for it to change into. So spirit doesn't change. It expresses itself in a variety of ways, but it doesn't change. What could it possibly change into? And I think that this is what Holmes meant when he talks about multiplicity from unity, that we are all living within the same life, but we are expressing in a multitude, a multiplicity of expressions everywhere. Everything is an expression of this constant underlying presence, moving and changing into an infinite expression of forms. It's really quite delightful. And Science of Mind teaches that God is all there is. You know, it doesn't teach us that there's God and then there's something else. It teaches that God is all there is. And sometimes it's even a little difficult to believe when we see things that don't look like what we think God should look like. But God is all there is. So that is like the basic principle. And then Science of Mind also teaches that this expression of life flowing from this underlying constant, this changeless presence, makes its way into form through the action of creative law, a natural law that is constant and changeless itself. And that we're always using it, whether we're conscious of it or not. It's always there. We're always creating. Sometimes, I was thinking about this, I was putting my talk together, when I think about that presence, you know, sometimes I like to imagine this presence, spirit, God, whatever name you like to call it, just kind of hanging out, you know, with all these wonderful creative ideas and its being and just being full of love. And you know how you feel when you want to create something, all those creative juices flowing around, and then it gets so full and so self-contained with all this that it just can't handle it anymore and explodes into, I don't know, something like maybe the Big Bang. You know, this creative presence just overflowing with so much life, just found a way to know itself by expressing itself through all of its creation. everything is an expression of this one constant presence that just has to express itself. Have you ever felt that way? I remember there was a moment when I was really exploring God, when I discovered that God was creation itself. Because when I was in a creative mood, I was so inspired, that I had to create something, that I had to move. Have you ever felt that way, when you have this idea in your head or your heart, and you just got to express it? And it could be anything. Maybe it's a painting or a song, like that beautiful song we just heard, or a meal. A good meal is a creation. A garden, a relationship is creation, or a family, or a career, or a book, or whatever it might be. But you just feel called to create it, to express it in the world. And you're pulled by that feeling of love and creativity. And then as you're doing it, there's this feeling of joy as you're creating it, in the doing of it, in the creation of it itself. We're expressions of this one constant presence, and we share its creative nature. It feels so good to create. It feels natural and necessary to us. And we are always doing it in one way or another. Even the thoughts that move through our head are calling us forward to create a life for that day, for that moment. And we can do this kind of creation that is innate within us, that we feel called to do, in a deliberate and a conscious way. Just like anything else we would create, like creating a butterfly garden that I enjoy so much these days. And throughout human history, people have described creation many different ways. That's why I shared my little version there of God sitting around thinking, I've got to do something, I've got to express. But in order to understand our world, I think we want to understand its purpose and how it was created, and our place in it. And I love the poetic way that creation is described in the Bible, in Genesis, where the ancient writers wrote, I wrote it down here so I can, oh, here it is. And the earth was without form and void, just like a blank canvas, nothing there. The earth was without form and void, and the darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And it's a beautiful way to describe the power of the movement of consciousness upon the void. Our ancient ancestors personified this presence. They called it God, many other words. And they created this personification in their image and likeness. And we do that still today. But it's to help us understand it and to come into relationship with it, because that's how we as human beings understand and bring meaning to our world, through relationship. So it makes sense that we would personify this presence, personalize this presence. And each of us has to come into our own relationship with this presence, to personify it and embody it in our own way. And that's the first step in conscious creation, to know what and who we are a part of, that we're a part of this larger life and this creative nature. And I have no doubt that as we expand our understanding through scientific discovery, which has really already happened, and through our own personal connection, our own personal experience, we'll all have a deeper experience of this presence. That's been true for me in my life. I'm sure it's been true for you. God, Spirit, whatever name you give it. And when we have a greater understanding, we also have a greater ability to participate with it through creative law. Our current understanding has certainly been expanded through the breakthrough discoveries in quantum physics. We understand now that everything moves in a wave of potential, and then it takes a consciousness, an observer, to focus on those waves and to drop them into our experience, to drop them into particles and form. And this idea it explains what mystics and master teachers have been saying for centuries. This idea that consciousness initiates the creative process. You know, whether we're talking about the universal consciousness of God moving upon the face of the waters, or whether we're talking about our individualized point of consciousness, focusing on our own thoughts and feelings and beliefs, creating our own individual experiences. For we are the universal individualized, and we're using the same consciousness. So I looked up to see what Ernest Holmes had to say about creative law. Of course, he says tons and tons about creative law, but he called it often mind in action, mind in action. So if we think of God as consciousness or mind, and then we think of law as moving that consciousness through action into form. And the most succinct statement I could find from Holmes, because Holmes was kind of a wordy guy. He used lots and lots of words. The most succinct definition, I guess, or explanation of law that I could find from Holmes was in the glossary in the back of the Science of Mind text. And he wrote, whatever we think, believe in, feel, visualize, vision, image, read, talk about, in fact, all processes which affect or impress us at all are going into the subjective state of our thought, which is our individualized use of universal mind. Well, that is a big, big idea. That is a lot to think about, because what I hear him saying is that whatever I believe in, feel, visualize, vision, image, read, talk about, whatever I think about, wherever I put my attention, that is what I'm creating from. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty easily distracted. Like when I come into the state of being and the feeling tone of a particular quality of the divine, and then I go about my daily life, it's pretty easy for me to get distracted. Have you ever, I thought about this cute little movie, you might have seen it. It's an animated movie, but it was so good. And I always think about this when I think about getting distracted. It's called Up. I think Ed Asner is the voice of the old man. And it's a story about how an old man befriends a young fatherless boy. And they go on this wonderful adventure together. They actually move the old man's house with helium balloons. That's why it's called Up. And they have this great adventure. And while they're on this adventure, they meet a group of dogs. And these dogs have these mechanical devices that allows them to talk. It translates their doggy language into human language. Obviously not real, but very, very cute. And there's this one dog, and his name is Doug. Doug the dog. And Doug really wants to stay with the old man and the young boy. And Doug's talking away, and he's telling him why he wants to come with them. And blah. And then all of a sudden, he stops in mid-sentence, and he goes, "Squirrel!" And he gets distracted by what he thinks is a squirrel or some moving object in his peripheral vision. But he just can't help himself. He just gets distracted and yells, "Squirrel!" And I have to say that sometimes I feel like I do that. Like I'll just be going along feeling really great, and I'll be right in the middle of something, and I just get distracted and want to scream, "Squirrel!" Oh, and I thought about this when I was reading that definition in the glossary of how the law works, because not only does this happen to dogs, but it happens to human beings too. We are easily distracted. And I certainly include myself, as I said, in this as well. And if it's true that everything we think, believe in, feel, visualize, vision, image, read, talk about is what we bring about through creative law, then we have to find a way to focus our thoughts and our feelings to be, as today's talk title instructs us, stayed on spirit. We sang that song last week in the beginning of our service. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on spirit. So How do we do that then? How do we train ourselves to not get distracted so easily and to actually become stayed? Well, again, last Sunday after service, I went over to my oldest son's house, Justin. I had dinner over there. And he and his fiance, Michelle, because that's not confusing at all, have this 7-month-old German short-haired puppy. His name is Gibbs. And Gibbs is a very good boy, but he's a 7-month-old puppy. And they're doing their best to train him not to eat shoes or pee on the floor or jump on people, all the usual things you train puppies not to do. And what Justin and Michelle do when they want to get Gibbs in the right frame of mind to not be distracted from the behavior they don't want him to do, but get him focused on the behavior they do want him to do, is they offer him a high value reward, like a toy or a treat, something that will take his focus off of the behavior they don't want, to put him to bring into his awareness the behavior they do want him to focus on. And I thought, you know what? I bet that works for humans too. That's what we do when we put our focus on the spiritual principles or the qualities of the constant, changeless presence that is behind everything that changes. We learn to refocus from what we see in the world that we don't want to the quality of spirit, the quality of the divine that we do want. And that quality then becomes our new state of being and creates a new cause. We train ourselves to move our conscious attention from what we don't want to what we do want. And we don't have to go far to do that, because as we know, everything that is contained within spirit is already contained within us. We simply have to go within and connect and shift our point of view. We become stayed on spirit. You know, as the song goes, woke up this morning. We stay our mind and our hearts on love, on peace, on joy, on whatever we'd like to experience more of in our life. And by focusing on the spiritual qualities and feeling them within us, we did that in our morning meditation this morning, thinking about a quality of the divine and filling our body with that experience of it. And by doing that, we create a state of being that will demonstrate into our life. Because if I've said this once, I've said it a million times, we don't necessarily create what we think about, but who we are, the state of being that we create within us. And we do that through creative law, and it becomes our lives. Have you ever noticed that when you start thinking about something, it shows up in your world? I remember when I had to figure out what kind of car I was going to get, because I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago, my Jeep got totaled and I had to get a new car, and I could get whatever I wanted. And I was trying to figure it out. And I was asking everyone their opinion. And I remember my brother Jeffrey said that if he could get any car he wanted, that he would get a Subaru Outback, because that's his dream car. And so I started thinking about the Subaru Outback, and everywhere I looked, I saw a Subaru Outback. I'm sure that they were there all along, but I never noticed them before because they weren't in my awareness. They weren't the first thing on my mind, but I saw them everywhere. When we give our attention to something, it moves to the foreground of our awareness. When Justin takes the shoe away from Gibbs, so he doesn't chew it up, the shoe still exists, but the treat or the toy now occupies Gibbs' awareness. Just as we stop focusing on what we don't want and focus on what we do want, what we do want moves to the foreground of our awareness, and the creative law, the creative process is activated by that quality, by that state of being. When I focus my attention on the qualities of spirit, that I'd like to see in my life. It doesn't mean that there are no other options. It just means that they're not where I'm putting my attention. It means I am stayed on the qualities of the constant, changeless presence of good that's always available to me and always available to you. And it means that I'm participating with the creative law through this new state of being. I'm casting a new vision for my life. Remember, this month's theme is pulled by vision. This vision that I'm holding, where I'm putting my awareness, is pulling me into that experience in my life. I'm being pulled by the new vision. And another wonderful thing about focusing on the quality of that constant, changeless presence is that not only is the quality already within us, and we simply have to draw it into our conscious awareness, but we don't really have to effort it into our experience at all. Really, all we have to do is feel it. And the feeling will move us immediately into the experience of that quality or that state of being. We feel peace, we feel love, prosperity, health, wholeness, vitality, whatever quality is that we want to draw forward. We don't have to really concern ourselves about thinking, are all of my thoughts focused on love? We just have to feel it. Because you know what happens? The feeling will influence our thoughts, and then will influence, and our thoughts will again influence our feeling. We create that loop, that thinking, feeling, being loop. And the feeling gets us there. It's so easy to remember. If I want to experience freedom or love, simply have to feel how that feels in my body. And then I get there without effort or without resistance. You know, not to say that things won't come up that will tempt us into moving back to what we don't want. You know, squirrel, they will come up. But now we have the tools to bring ourselves back. We can step back into the feeling. You know, I was thinking about, and I know we've talked about this before on our calls and in our classes, about that great visual that Michael Singer gave us. He said that when we come up against something that really throws us off, something that distracts us and gets our attention, you know, squirrel, something we're tempted to kind of push back against, Singer invites us to imagine, I love this visual, that we're playing tug of war, and we're on one side and an entire NFL football team is on the other side, and we have prepared for this day. You know, we've gotten down our footwork so that we can use our weight to our best advantage. You know, we know exactly how to move our body. And then he says, but we don't have to win by pushing against an opposing force. He said we can win simply by surrendering. We can let go of our end of the rope, and the NFL football team on the other side will just fall back. And then the great part about it is all that energy that we're using to do the tug of war, to fight against the opposing force, we free up all that energy to create something new, to create what we really want by casting that vision forward. It seems so simple, and yet, you know, I have to admit that my first instinct is to push against what I don't want, rather than just not fighting it and not resisting it and letting life flow, letting the life flow that I want to see from the constant, changeless presence of the divine. You know, a great spiritual practice that I want to leave with you that I've done before and still do to some extent is I'll pick a quality of spirit, you know, whatever it may be. And I'll focus on that particular quality for an entire day. You could do it for longer. You could do it for an entire week. And it could be anything. It doesn't matter. Just pick one, though. Peace, love, compassion, prosperity, connection, friendship, whatever it is. Just pick one. And all through your day, stop. Like, I like to stop at least once every hour. I love the idea that Rob gave me about setting my timer on my iPhone to stop me every hour. You can do that, or just every time you think about it, stop and draw up the feeling of that particular quality, you know, and just feel it in your body. You know, let it be your feeling prayer, your moment of connection, you know, and just pull up that quality that you want to demonstrate in your life and honestly in the world. And here's the thing, feeling is the key. It's easy to stop and feel for just a few minutes. And what we feel, we become. We create that. We activate creative law through that connection and that feeling. And we know that creative law is always listening to our thoughts and our feeling and our state of being. And it always says yes. It always says yes. So this is just a wonderful way to move through your day. If you've got something up or you have a health challenge and you want to draw up a feeling of vitality or divine right action, whatever it is, just stop and feel. And law says yes. So let's do a little prayer around that right now. So I invite you to take in a nice deep centering breath. God is all that exists. It is everywhere present. Everything lives, moves, and has its being within this divine life, this one constant, changeless presence that expresses itself in and through its creation and creates all change. It creates us. And as points of expression of this divine presence, we create too. We share its creative nature. We are its creative nature. So I speak my word for and about everyone that is on this call and everyone that is not, everyone that is a part of our spiritual community, and anyone that is walking upon the face of the earth. Even if there are people and life out in the universe, I speak my word about them, that there's a shift in consciousness and opening to a new way of being, a new experience of the divine presence moving in and through and as our lives. And it expresses in every area of our lives, in our healthy, vibrant bodies, in our radiant and abundant relationships and connection, in our friendships, in our family, in our work in the world, in our overflowing abundant bank accounts, and everything that we need to support and live a vibrant, wonderful, healthy, beautiful, expressive life. And for this, I'm just so grateful. And that gratitude cracks us open even further because, as Dispenza tells us, it is the ultimate state of receivership to be in gratitude. So I just draw all of this into my heart, into my feeling, into my mind, and my body, and my soul, and my expanded self. And I know that it is already so. Or I know that I am casting this vision into the great spiritual law of creation itself. And the law always says yes. So I relax in this, I allow it to be. And we signify our agreement by saying together, and so it is. And so it is. So now we move into another spiritual practice, the act of sacred giving. And I tried to find a new affirmation for us to say today. Let's see, I do want to go back. Oh no, here it is. So there are different ways that if you are giving financially to this center, which the leadership and each and every other member of this community appreciates, for we wouldn't be here without your generous support. You can give on Venmo, but as you know, there is a fee, a service fee for that. You can give on Tithely. It is under the name of our Assistant Minister, Leslie Massapus. So look for Leslie Massapus' name on Venmo, and that goes right into our One Heart, One Mind bank account. Or you can send a snail mail check to our Assistant Treasurer, Jim Massapus, and he'll post that address for you. And I invite you to imagine that you're holding your financial gift, whatever gift you give, your talent, your tithe, whatever it is, your love, your energy. And imagine that you're holding it over your heart and say the affirmation with me. Divine love in and through me. blesses and multiplies all the good I am, all that I have, and all the good I give and receive. I am so grateful for everything. And so it is. Starts out like an old affirmation we did, and then I tweaked it a little bit. It's nice to have a little change. So, Leslie, do we have any announcements that you'd like to share?
Tuesday evening, we are going to be starting a series on the Declaration of Principles. And Reverend Michelle is going to kick that off with page, let me take a look at it, 89 on living the science of mind. I received an email from Temple Adat Shalom, the Women's Sisterhood group, and they wanted to let you know that on August 15th, they are going to be having a rummage sale from 8 to 3 to raise money for the children's education programs.
Bill will be so happy they're doing that because he said their collection of stuff to sell is everywhere in the temple.
They have lots of variety, she tells me, and most of the items are $10 or less.
That's great.
So, okay. Are there any other announcements?
Well, on Monday, we get together at 6 o'clock to do our collective. Actually, what we've been doing is we've been holding the space for our Center for Expansion and Growth and Prosperity. So we come together, and it's a very short coming together. We only, for 12 minutes, sit in the spiritual principles that we want to draw forward in our center. But doing it in a collective way, in that collective consciousness, I think is very powerful. So anyone is invited to attend. I will send out the Zoom link. I highly encourage you to come and join us in holding the space and the consciousness for our center so that we expand even more and include even more people. I see Debbie Sue is on here today. I want to give a shout out to her because she was in our principals class, and I loved meeting her and getting to know her. So, and Jason's here, and Michael's here, some new people and new faces. Well, we've seen them a few times, but I'm so glad you're here, and welcome, welcome, welcome. And you are invited to join us on Monday or Tuesday evenings, or when we begin up again on Wednesday evening. Everyone is invited to join us. So.
And also to let you know that if you've got anything going on in your life that you would like to have help with, pray with a practitioner. And their names and phone numbers are listed in the weekly newsletter that you receive. Okay.
And if you're not getting that newsletter, pop me an email and I'll add you to the iContact email list. I think I have most people on there, but if you're not, I certainly would love to put you on.
Okay. I believe we're ready for our benediction. And so Rob McGregor is presenting our benediction today.
There we go.
Was it a surprise, Rob?
Actually, my appointment secretary, Robert Brown, informed me last night. So I have been duly notified of my duties here. And it won't change what I say, but what they. So if you could just close your eyes, go within and feel the goodness. Because what I am appreciating right now is the change, the eternal change in our life that keeps life interesting. But I am equally grateful for the fact that with our word, we can specify that change is always better, ever better. I am so grateful for the change in our love because our love lives are getting better and better and better. I am so grateful for the health that we have that is changing because it is changing for the good. We are feeling better and enjoying life more and more. And I am so grateful for the affluence we have because as our economics change, they always change for the better. We insist upon that. We declare that, and it is so. Thank you, God for the change. Thank you, God, for the direction that change takes, because it makes for a life that is more and more fun. I am so grateful that this is true. I release my word and together we say, and so it is.
And so it is. So I picked a closing song. It probably should have been a little bit more upbeat, but it's about, let's see, what's the song, Richard? I'm struggling to recall. Oh yeah, that's it. God Speaks to Me, because I wanted to draw into our conscious awareness that we're always communicating with spirit, with that constant, silent, changeless presence. So I'll share the words. It's kind of a meditative song, but that's okay. All right, Richard. Richard, you're muted, honey. Still muted. I can ask you to unmute. That might
Oh,
help.
there we go.
There you go.
Yeah, okay.
Now we can hear you.
In the silence, God speaks to me. 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 God speaks to me. God speaks to me. God speaks to me in the silence of my heart. God speaks to me. God speaks to me. God speaks to me in the silence of my heart.
Thank you. Just a reminder that we are constantly in communication with the divine. It is who we are.